Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here to interview who's minding the store. Even I'm curious. So, first off, we come to realize that this movie is to be a Jerry Lewis film. I know what a lot of people are going to immediately just start typing away. They're like, well, my favorite is Geisha Boy. Like, you have a favorite Geisha Boy? Okay, that's a little strange. Well, it's 2025. Everybody has their flavor of tastes, but that's on you. Maybe people can go on and state about the Nutty Professor and say how much enjoyment they were to have had with that film, or maybe they will go on and state other things that I probably may have not gone on and said or listed here, like a Mad Mad World or some other things of which that I have gone on to not know about within my life that you are aware of. Let me know in the comments below either way, because you are to be a name thruster of sorts, which would go on and be who you are. So we would go on and make our way into who's mining a store, and we would come to find that there is a guy named Norman, who's played by Jerry Lewis here. Norman goes on and falls for a woman named Barbara, and Norman, it seems, is to feasibly have found out from Barbara that there seems to be an employment job opening at her retail store. There is to be kind of more going on than that, and I will get to that in a second here. So, Norman goes on to, of course, apply for said job, and it seems that he is to get it so easily as we have a guy named Quimby, and I'm getting flashbacks of Simpsons in my head, Bo Quimby. We go on and have Quimby, who is telling Norman about, well, hey, sir, like, you have to work your way from the bottom and get your way up, and and you have to work late, and you have to work hard, and all of this and that, and rigmarole. And Norman's like, well, yeah, I'm willing to do it, yeah. So we'll come to find that Quimby is to have a ulterior motive going on here, as we come to find that there is a woman named Mrs. Tuttle who is to find out that Barbara, her daughter, has fallen in love with a guy named Norman. Mrs. Tuttle will go on and find that because she has seeked out some private investigators to follow her daughter. It seems that Barbara has fallen head over heels with Norman, and Miss Tuttle will have gone on to see some footage of Norman and realize how much of a garbage disposal and slob he is, and a klutz and a number of other things. And so, as well as finding out what kind of career and job this man has had, all the odd jobs and things like that. So, Mrs. Tuttle is to, of course, go on and feel that it is to be in her nature to butt into this relationship that possibly will lead to marriage, seemingly at some point of this film, towards the end of it, and try to hope that if Norman could just work in this retail store, his soul or character will go on and be broken to where it is to, of course, have Barbara and Norman to end up being no more. So, Norman goes on and takes this retail job, and I too have gone on to do some crappy stuff within a retail scale of life. And at some certain points, I would go on and be way too high on ladders and a number of other things. And I would, at some point, have to go on and make the joke to people of, tell my wife I love her. I don't have a wife, but tell her anyways. Goodbye, my dear friends. Because I am to quite possibly think that I'm going to die this day. Because this job of which that I'm going to have to do is so absurd and so dangerous that I probably will go into the after of life. So we go on here, and Norman makes his way into this retail store, regardless of the absurd, dangerous jobs that he is to go on and be given. Norman figures out a way to accomplish them or to ultimately survive them, and Norman just continues on to be this unstoppable force, to the point where Quimby is calling Mrs. Tuttle and saying, "Man, this guy's character will not be broken this day. I'm sorry, Miss Tuttle, but we cannot do anything but just realize that this man is just not going to give." So the further and further the obstacles are replaced within the store that almost destroy it in a number of fashions, we have Norman that continues on to where eventually Barbara is to get a whiffing suspicion of some certain bit of trickery that is to be going on here. But eventually there has to be something left for spoilers, right? So by the end of this, like, I don't know if the ending is all that good, but if anything, I guess there just has to be a way for this movie to still end. So at the end of the day, I was to find this movie to be wonderful. It is to be just so hilarious. Even for those of you that have gone on to have a retail career of life, you will, of course, go on and just find this to be funny. You won't go on and go through it and get PTSD or flashbacks or whatever. Like, you'll go on and just have a good time about this movie because it's so goofy and so fun and also just so absurd. There is also to be at a certain point where there are characters that are to not pay for things, and then you end up just saying that, "Oh, just charge it to me." And I'm like, okay, like, that would never happen in the store. But regardless, like, this movie was a lot of comedic fun. We have at certain points where Jerry Lewis is to take these certain items and have them be way absurdly heavy, or to go on and take a TV and like toss it up a ladder like it's nothing, and I'm just and this is like tube TV era where, like, yeah, these things are friggin' heavy, and not as like the plasmas or the LCDs and all those kind of other TVs that are more kind of flatter and what have you, or the curved or the 3Ds or whatever that is to be currently going on in a retail product of TV ways of which to create weird, absurd things that are to be put in place. Regardless, but anyways, so with that said, I would definitely recommend seeing this movie. It seems that this movie is available on a couple of apps for you to go on and rent for $3.99. More than likely, one of them is to be on YouTube. So if you just want to go on and just rent this thing, by all means. But I'm going to go on and conveniently have you get a way to say you can see this for absolutely free. So, with that said, for how I'm to go on and say this in the past is kind of to be switched up here, because I found a possible app that is to be available on a Google Play Store. So if you are to be a mobile usage person of any kind of life, then if you have a Google Play Store, if you have a mobile device, you can go on and be able to search this app, KLEDE Plus. Clean Plus. You can go on and find this app. I just searched this today. You can download this app. It's to be kind of like Zelifonic, Zelivonic, of which that I've used in the past. I've switched over to this other app. It's the same exact freaking thing. And logically, you can go on and watch this movie for absolutely free. You can also go on to an app called Moopzzi, Moopzzi, but you would probably have to Google search this. You would probably have to go on and download an APK thing. Regardless, if you're just specifically looking for this movie and that's it, then by all means, go into the thrust of doing the first thing that I had gone on to mention, so that we can watch this for free, and you can watch whatever the heck you want to, instead of having to be burdened or to be forced into having to only get to a certain app where you can only watch certain things. You can go on to one specific app and watch a cluster F of a lot of that you would have to go on and finally thrust your way into enjoyment of seeing. So, because this movie, baby, chef's kiss. I really did enjoy it. I would recommend everybody seeing it as well. I know that I'm to do this movie, and it's probably not to be by the masses, to be the well-known Jerry Lewis film, but regardless, I felt that this movie fits what's going on in the time of season right now. Maybe you need it, maybe you don't need it. Otherwise, it's thrusted upon you. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just push into full-on spoilers, because I think it's about that time yet again. I know a lot of people may go on and click their way out of here. That's completely understandable. Thank you for going on and checking this out regardless, because I do appreciate it. I'm sure a lot of people may have not exactly gone on and gotten exactly what they wanted from this review, or to go on and feasibly be baffled by my weird way of which to have talked about it. But either way, I do appreciate you taking the otherwise time of your life to watch this. So thank you for doing so. Either way, I'm here to say that it is about that time, yet again, to of course go into spoil time. Spoil time, it's about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. Let me know in the comments below what is to be your favorite Jerry Lewis film. What is to be your favorite store movie? Because maybe I haven't quite covered it yet. Maybe you are to go on and want to let me know about a certain holiday of season film that you are to go on and enjoy, because logically, I am to be on the cusp of looking for certain holiday season films. For future reviews, what I'm going through here is I found this movie just randomly while I was just siphoning through some stuff that I kind of had just kept as just kind of storaged away, and I just kind of, I found this, and I'm like, okay, this movie looks like the thing to do today. Ultimately, I will go on and still seemingly be doing Power Rangers in one way or the other. I don't know exactly how that's going to come about, but without a doubt, I hope to try to achieve consistently keeping on doing that. Whether it is to be Mighty Morphins or Super Sentais or whatever that ends up being, I will hopefully continue to try to do that. So if you guys are interested in Power Rangers and interested in maybe some thoughts of what a future review could be of that, then by all means. I am to also, justifiably enough, continue to try to find some other movies of certain sorts. I've gone on to look at stuff like the original VHS movie. I've looked into stuff like The Family Stone, because it's a family film. There's a Neil Patrick Harris movie that seems to, after I've gone on to watch the trailer, remind me of stuff like movies of Regarding Henry. So I might either check that movie out, or I might even check out Regarding Henry. Oddly, either one of those movies are to feel like a family film to me, so I may go on and either check out those out. I think the Neil Patrick Harris movie has Stranger in the title or something like that. But there is also to go on and be certain assortment of just other things that I kind of have just stored away also. Like High Tension could be an interesting horror film to eventually go in and review at some points. Or because I know the way of which a lot of people will be like, well, yeah, that ending. And I'm like, yeah, that ending. I have not seen it, but I know about the ending. That's weird. I've never seen the movie, but I know how it ends. There is also a possibility that there could be just a random assortment of things that I still go on and have the itching to cover. And hopefully that will probably lead to some cartoon things. Like, I still want to go on and review Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, the animated show, just to see a couple episodes of that, just have a good time with it. There is to also just kind of be some random assortment of just cartoon stuff that I think will kind of lend quite nicely to the holiday season. I hope to actually go on and do some traditional Christmas and well, there isn't much of traditional Thanksgiving stuff, but Christmas stuff when it comes down to the following months. So let me know in the comments below. Would this be your favorite Christmas film? Would this be your favorite Thanksgiving movie? Would this be your favorite film of whatever kind? And maybe I might just be interested in checking that out also. I may be also fairly tempted to cover new releases. Predator Badlands, it seems, is honestly, oddly enough, getting a lot of people's attention. Bizarrely, I thought that was going to be something that people were going to quickly forget about, but I guess I was wrong. Maybe if people are to be interested in seeing my thoughts about this new review of released thing, then maybe I will check it out. If people are to go on and be interested in Running Man, I'm definitely going to go on and review that fairly soon when it actually gets released. So by all means, kind of wait till that gets released, and I hope to get it out as soon as humanly possible. As soon as I can find out where to actually watch it, I will go on and check it out. So, there is also this movie called Speaking Parts that actually looks really interesting. I don't know, I'm just saying a lot here, but if anything, I feel that this is probably at a tailor end of review. So, without further ado, let's pause here. I'll get on my cast list. I'll whip out everything that I'm to go on, and of course, whip out to, without a doubt, further describe scene for scene. If you know what I mean, Jelly Bean, going into further detail and just talk through this film. Hopefully, you're going to feel however way of which that you want to digest this review and have a good day either way. So thank you. So let's pause here. Let's get all this stuff out. Alright, beginning a breakdown film. So full on spoilers, everybody. So the beginning of this, I honestly like how they go on and they do the opening credits of this film. It's actually fairly smart. We go and have this guy who opens the door for these two private investigators. One of them, I believe, is Mr. Orlando's, or I believe maybe both of them are Mr. Orlando. Because she says plural of Orlando. So it could be both of them having bizarrely the same name, because maybe they're brothers. Who knows? So we would have these Orlandos making their way through this mansion, and they're taking quite a bit of cusp of time here. So logically, like, it's almost kind of laughable all the ways in which that they're kind of going into this house, as if, like, I'm thinking that they just at certain points of this movie just kept redoing certain hallways to make them seem slightly tweakingly different, and then just kept on going, is what I hoped or assumed that that's what they were just feasibly doing here, because that would have actually been funny. So as Orlandos make their way into Mrs. Tuttle's office, we come to find that Mrs. Tuttle is having this jotted down message to Mr. Salisbury to have him go on and talk about some downtown Kansas City businesses that, of course, she wants to go on and make some adjustments to. After and then she states the deadline of June 1st. As Mrs. Tuttle has Mr. Salisbury leave, she then brings in the Orlandos. So the Orlandos go on and they bring in this projectional presentation, and so Miss Tuttle goes on and watches this. So Orlando's goes on to mention how, since they have watched this man that is being infatuated with Barbara, and found out everything about him, like his odd jobs. He couldn't even go on and be able to work as a mailman because he couldn't hold on to the bag, and all these other things that are to go on and just kind of be rather funny. And then Mrs. Tuttle is to watch this clip where Norman is to go on and just simply, it looks like either eat this soup or this ice cream. I'm not quite sure because it's done in a black and white format. So it looks like ice cream to me in my brain. So Norman is going on and he's taking this spoon, and he's not only like kind of like putting it like very near his chin, but also he's doing like this. And we have Norman that while he continues to try to consume this bowl of whichever, he is to go on and just be sloppingly, like he has to like lick his hands, and then he like caught something in his mouth, like and so we have Tuttle that looks at these men. It's like, my daughter has fallen in love with this man. This man is a human garbage disposal. And so, furthermore, we go into present day occupation of said Norman. We come to find that he is to be wrangling a ton of dogs because he is to be this poodle and dog sitter. And Tuttle's like, what exactly does that mean, dog sitter? And so the thing of it is Norman goes on, and while people are away, he is to just sit at home and just watch over these dogs while these people are away. So he gets paid for that. Like, it's like a babysitter, but it's a dog sitter. It's very strange, but if anything, that's the job of which that this guy has taken on. So we get to a point in this clip where Norman is dragging so many dogs with him, and I mean a lot, that he goes on and he realizes that there's a tree that is coming onto the sidewalk, and he goes on to grab himself onto the tree as if he's going to hug it, and he further and further gets to the point to where he's like bending the tree while trying to hit, and so he gets slingshot. And like, we obviously have Tuttle who's just watching this and just like, God, like. So then they go on and see that Norman and Barbara, they're together in this black and white clip, and we of course go on to see them kissing. And then when Norman walks off, he is just kind of just walking a very just oddish of manners. And so we finally have Tunnels like, all right, I've seen enough. So she tells the men to take everything that they've gone on and shown as clips here, to leave it with her so she can burn them. And is to be like, okay, all right, well, like, this is gonna end up being like a person that this daughter of mine is going to marry, and a part of my family that I'm gonna have to give inheritance to. And so we would go on to, of course, just have Tuttle, who's to also start to compare feasibly Norman to also her own husband. And no, wait. She compares Barbara to her husband, and see how they're a lot alike. And And that's exactly when Mrs. Tuttle kind of walks in and starts talking like, oh, hey, yeah, hey, yeah. So we have Mrs. Tuttle or Mr. Tuttle that goes on and says to Mrs. Tuttle that he's going to go on to the office, and Mrs. Tuttle is like, oh, okay, so what are you going to do there? And he just mentions how he's going to go on and he's going to practice his putting. He's going to get a couple of putts in because he has really nothing to do. So he just goes to his office and just does nothing but putting. So the next thing we see here is to have Mrs. Tuttle kind of wave the guys away because she has no longer need of their service. And then Mrs. Tuttle looks at the picture of Barbara. The next thing we see is the transition of Barbara. She's at the elevator service, going on and having her own father in the elevator, as well as there is a woman that is to need to want to go to a certain floor. And Barbara goes on to tell her, it's like, oh yeah, well that's of course to go on and be the intimates area, the bras and the panties and so on and so forth. It's like, and the old woman goes, yeah, and I need them all. Oh, it's ladies' lingerie, 4th floor. So I had to kind of think of in my brain what it was. So as the woman goes on and leaves, she has her floor. We have Barbara and father who is to go on and turn to one another. And Barbara goes on and asks about how mother is, and so it seems that there is this kind of charade going on, but the father actually does know kind of what's going on here, and Barbara does go on and divulge to her father that she's having this secret romance, and it is kind of interesting how that all plays out once we get further into the film, where eventually Norman will go on to find a best friend in Barbara's father, but it doesn't seem that Norman is to even know that Barbara has this guy as her father. So yeah, so anyways, so if anything, Barbara's father is to just be so pleased and so happy that Barbara has found somebody because, of course, she looks very radiant and very happy. So Mrs. Tuttle is to go on and ask if there's a possibility that he's going to meet this strapping lad, and Barbara is to say, it's like, well, yeah, I'll introduce you to him after we're married, because she wants to keep it secret because she wants to find somebody that's going to go on and love her for her. And specifically, if this guy knew who she actually was, there would be no way that he would go on and fall for her because of the money that she has to go on and have and the inheritance of which that she has. So yeah, like, she is to want to kind of keep it a secret that she is to be as rich as she is, so that way she can go on and kind of get this guy to marry her without her knowing, or without him knowing about the riches. Anyways, so here's where we have Norman, and he's house sitting for a dog named Bosley, and the two of them are watching this doctor's show, and the whole time I am freaking like, I'm laughing at this doctor thing. It's so hilarious. So we have this doctor who is to kind of cut into his patient, and he doesn't realize that they had knocked him out. They had given him anesthesia. And so this guy is like cutting into this guy, and the patient's like, oh, it's like, oh, come on. Like, it's not that bad. So we go on and we have Norman, and I think he's eating some kind of peanuts or something. And the whole time, like, he's sharing it with the dog because the dog is like, it's like, okay, all right. So, and the two of them are talking, and like, also Norman is kind of adjusting the dog's eyes because, like, it's one of those dogs where it's like a mop dog where it's like you can barely see the dog's eyes. But also this dog is gigantic. So Norman is going on and telling this dog that it's about time for his bedtime, and so he's trying to get him off of this couch to try to get him to go to bed. And the dog just will not go. So we now go on to Mrs. Tuttle. She's going on and talking or calling Mr. Quimby here. Mr. Quimby is to be the guy who is to be the owner or general manager. Yeah, general manager, because the owner is to be Mrs. Tuttle. The general manager is to be Mr. Quimby here. He goes on and states that at some point of the film. So the general manager goes on and is to answer Mrs. Tuttle's phone call, and there's some kind of funny, interesting repartee between the two of them, as we'd have Tuttle who's to say, "Hey, Quimby, it seems that you're out of breath. Have you been chasing around that secretary of yours?" Like, I know that the two of you are having your love spattle and what have you, and I will allow it, and if anything, we should probably just give her a raise, and so Quimby is like, not only are you, Mrs. Tuttle, my boss, but you're a really good friend, and I really appreciate it. Because, like, they're not even, like, they're not even going on and trying to not say that they're not doing these things, so it's kind of funny. So, Miss Tuttle goes on and has this agenda to give to Quimby to be like, hey, can you tell my daughter about this position being open at our store? So that way she'll go on and she'll tell this to her lover and get him to work here. So Quimby goes on and tells Tuttle, it's like, oh, I'll do that right away. Like, whatever you want. So we would have Quimby as he is to make his way to this elevator, telling Barbara about this job position open, and Barbara will go on and tell Norman about this when she makes her way to visit Norman while he's watching over Bosley. So we have Mr. Tuttle making his way back home, and Mrs. Tuttle has to ask Mr. Tuttle how his day went. It's like, oh yeah, like it didn't really go that well. If anything, like I don't think I'm very good at putting. Like if anything, I think I need one of those like green carpets to make it really look like it's a golf course in my office. Sure, whatever you want, Mr. Tuttle. So Mrs. Tuttle goes on. It's like, well, yeah, I'll definitely get one of those, like one of those blue green kind of turf things. Yeah, I'll do one of those. And Mrs. Tuttle's like, oh yeah, that's great. So, just so, and there's so much stuff here that like there's bits of dialogue that just they fly off the handle and they say some absurd things at some point in this movie that like I just again I had a good laugh at. It was good. So here's where Norman is trying to just drag this dog off to get some sleep, and here's where he goes on to open this door and to be met by Barbara. So Barbara goes on and is talking to Norman about this job opening, and so Norman is saying that it's like, okay, good. Like, this could be a way for me to save up so that we can go on and get married. Because Norman, in his mind, is saving up for like $800, absurd amount of money, for them to go on and then, like, in turn, get married. And eventually, Barbara and Norman, like, they'll just be so in love with one another. And Barbara will just tell Norman, it's like, how about we get married right away? Like, how about we get married now? And Norman's like, no, 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 I'm saving up money. And Barbara's like, no, we really should get married. And like, the two of them are like kissing so much in this like scene here, where Norman is going on, like, well, how about 600, 500, 3, how about I say $50, and then we'll get married. And then Barbara's like, no, like, if anything, like, we can live here. Like, this specific scene happens a little later here. I'm getting ahead of myself. But, like, that's how in love these two are. That's how much that they fall for one another. So, so Barbara goes on and tells Norman about the job position opening. And so Norman eventually goes on to realize, like, well, hey, yeah, like, if I'm going to go to this whole job opening, maybe I should kind of give myself a shave. Uh, like, maybe I should kind of wash up and get myself cleaned before I go to this interview. And maybe I should press my clothes. And, like, all this. So we also have Norman that's like, well, hey, yeah, like, maybe if I save enough money, like, I can get you an engagement ring. Yeah, Norman is really trying to, like, just scrape together just some kind of money. So all of a sudden, the further and further the two of them are talking, Bosley, the dog, ends up getting out. So Bosley just starts running around this area, and Norman tries chasing after it. So we get to the point to where the two of them end up on these stairs, and both of them fall over. And as they kind of give up on the dog and they continue to talk here, and Barbara ends up asking Norman here, it's like, well, hey, did you get hurt? And he's like, oh, no, it's a good hurt because of you. And he goes on to say, it's like, yeah, you're so, like, I can't believe you're so beautiful. You're the first person I ever met that I really trusted. And the two of them are seemingly in this loving embrace. And then Bosley's there, like, hey. And so Norman's like looking at the dog. It's like, like, all right, all right. So the next thing we see is to, of course, have Norman meet up with this secretary, Miss Lott, who's, I believe, named Shirley here. So Shirley ends up calling Mr. Quimby to let him know that, of course, Norman's here. It is kind of interesting at some certain points how, like, a lot of people will easily pronounce Norman's last name, Mr. Pfeiffer. But then eventually we get to a point where there is one guy who is to seemingly be a part of this store that is to deal with these certain gourmet of food, and has these very specific tastes, where he goes on and he calls Norman's last name like Puffer or some kind of other goofy name. And that ends up kind of being the run of the joke with that one character, who used to try to pronounce Norman's last name. And then Norman goes on to say, hey, like, I'm butchering your last name, you're butchering mine. What's your name? He says it's Irving. It's like, oh, well, my name's Norman. How about we just stick to that? Because we're going to be butchering one another's last names. So it's better just kind of like get to that point where we're just going to say the first names. But, anyways, back to this moment here. So Norman goes on, meets with Quimby, and he's glad to meet him. So here's where we go on. We have Quimby, who's to go on and say that there's a high standard here, that it's going to be that he is to go on and need modest, young, honest men, and that they need to work from the ground up, and so on and so forth. Like, there's a lot that kind of this guy just spouts out here. And it seems that Norman is agreeing to all of it. So, well, yeah, like that's definitely what I'm here for. That's definitely why I wanted to come here and work. And so Quimby also states, it's like, well, yeah, but with hard work, you'll go on and you will get rewarded. You'll get a plethora of raises and so on and so forth. And then Norman goes and turns to Shirley, and Shirley's like, well, yeah, I've had a many of different raises. And Norman turns to her, it's like, from doing stuff for the store, right? Because Norman has some kind of suspicions already that it's like, yeah, you've probably been doing some stuff for Quimby, maybe not for the store. Maybe that's why you got the raises you were getting. But Norman just kind of turns back. It's like, okay, Quimby, just kind of continue on your rant. So he goes on, and Quimby talks about the great climb to success, and that you need to climb to the very top. And he's like, I'm ready to climb. So anyways, so we have Quimby that goes on and gives Norman this paper of stuff that he's planning on Norman to try to accomplish here, and he's hired. So the next thing we go on and see Norman do is go into this office. This office that it seems he's to go on and meet with this woman and sit down at this office, and he's supposed to, I guess, be typewriting. The sad thing of it is, there's no typewriter there. So Norman just goes on and seemingly pretends that he's typewriting. He goes into the whole motion. He does like, and he makes these like goofy faces. He gets closer and higher, and he eventually goes on to the point where he has this paper in front of him. He's like, all right, okay, well, like, I guess that was done. So we go on to have Shirley, who ends up getting a phone call, and it's Mrs. Tuttle, and she's going to transition it to Mr. Quimby so the two of them can talk. So they talk about, oh, did you hire that Norman guy? And Quimby's like, oh, yeah, I hired him, and I was to go on and give him this job. And so Quimby is to go on and need to go out to this window to see the progress of what Norman is going to try to accomplish this task with. And Tuttle wants to hear everything. She's like, I want to know. Because what Quimby is to have Norman do is to try, at the very end of this flagpole, that is to be on the side of this building, right nearby this window, Norman has to figure out a way to get to the very end of the flagpole and paint it gold. And so what first we are to go on and see Norman do here is he is to try to get onto the flagpole and hang on to it. And so we have Quimby watching this and mentioning to Tuttle as he's like, oh my god, he's slipping. Oh my god. He's gonna fall. He's gonna die. Yeah. So we have Norman that is trying to get onto this flagpole, but then he decides, let's do something else. So he recedes back through the wind. And so Quimby's like, maybe he quit. Maybe he stopped. Maybe we got to him already. And then all of a sudden, Norman comes back, and he comes back and he's at the window, and he has this really long fishing rod, absurdly long. And the fishing rod is to go on and have a paintbrush at the end of it. And so now Norman is just kind of painting this ball from a distance. And Quimby is like, oh, well, I guess he just outsmarted us this day. And he goes on and tells Tuttle about this. And coincidentally, also, Quimby had this bucket of paint fall on top of him, and now he has paint all over his body. And when Shirley tries to clean it off, like, it just makes him look a lot more shiny, as she used to go on and say here. So we would have Norman that makes his way through this building and has this fishing rod with this paintbrush on it because he wants to finish up this painting of this flagpole. And he goes into Mr. Tuttle's office. The two of them just start talking to one another, and it seems that they're really easily hitting it off. And also, Norman is wearing this like maintenance gear, of which that he's to just kind of temporarily be wearing because he's going to go on and adjust throughout the store and just kind of get to these other jobs. But anything, that's the reason why Norman is going to do this specific task, because it's a maintenance job. And yeah, like a lot of those guys end up doing crummy jobs. So both Norman and Mr. Tuttle go out the window, and Mr. Tuttle sees Norman paint this flagpole. He's like, "Oh my God, that's a genius way for you to have gone on and painted this thing." And then Mr. Tuttle goes on and is to talk to Norman about the people who are to go on and own this business and show all these paintings about how, of course, Mr. Tuttle is to be one of the paintings. And then he shows his ancestry of prior people who has owned this building prior. And then Mr. Tuttle will flip every single one of these paintings, and we'll find behind them there'll be all of these females who have gone on to be the women behind the men. So the one thing that I think doesn't quite age well within this film is when the two of them are kind of going on and kind of talking, and Norman's character is stating how he wants his wife at home to make babies and this and that, and I'm just like, no, like that kind of seems very outdated. And like, if anything, like, a woman has a right to just kind of do whatever she wants to. And like, yeah, so if there is any disagreement of that, like, I definitely don't want any kind of cancel culture of any kind, because I'm sure I've made mistakes in the past about saying certain things in certain videos. But like, this one, I'm to be like, yeah, like, I definitely don't want anybody to go on and see this film and think that I have like the same beliefs as these certain gentlemen here that are to go on it and kind of say certain things. Like, that's of course not where I'm at all having any agreement of what they're saying here. But anyways, as Norman is to look at these paintings, he's noticing that Mr. Tuttle is to continue to putt. Norman realizes, yeah, like, I don't really like how he's going on and putting here. So Norman says that it's more beneficial for Mr. Tuttle to check out this certain uh, golf practice machine that they have within the store. And Mr. Turtle's like, oh, we have one of those? So the two of them make their way to this golf machine, and Norman tries to get uh, this bag of clubs, but he realizes that he can't hold on to it, because this is to kind of relate to before when the private investigators were talking to Mrs. Tuttle and said that he couldn't hold on to the mailman bag. So this is kind of re-referencing that thing of prior. So I like that this is a kind of continuation of them stating that. So the two of them leave to go to this machine as Mr. Quimby is going on and getting toweled up. But again, he's just looking more and more shiny. That's what I said before. So Barbara is to open this elevator, and both Norman and Mrs. Tuttle are to be on it. And it's interesting here how Norman and Barbara are trying to like sneak these like hand holdings and things of that nature. And Mr. Tuttle's like, ooh, like just whistling away, just like da da la la la. So, and like both Barbara and Norman are just having this like weird intimate moment between one another without Mr. Tuttle noticing. So, as Norman and Mr. Tuttle leave the elevator, we have Mr. Tuttle kind of waving at Barbara, and then we would go on to have Norman that kind of pokes his head back out like, hey, and Barbara's like, hey. Like, so Norman goes on and takes Mr. Tuttle to the golf machine. So what happens is that Mr. Tuttle goes on and he whacks this machine, and he does 260 yards, which I guess is pretty decent. I don't know about golfing or enough about it. So I've golfed in my life, but if anything, like I just golf for when I whack a thing, I just go pure by power. I just like there's no technique. There's just like I'm just smacking it as hard as I can, and that's just what I end up doing. So eventually Norman is to get a chance at him going on and hitting this ball, and what ends up happening is he ends up hitting it way too hard to have it go and break through this glass. And then there is this chain effect or chain reaction effect where this ball goes freaking everywhere. So this goes through this glass, it hits this traffic police officer, and he gets hit in the head. It goes through Mrs. It goes through Shirley's window, breaks through her window, goes out of her office. I think it goes back outside to hit the traffic officer again. To where now the traffic officer is just freaking out about like, why does this thing keep hitting me? Norman and Mr. Tuttle are kind of behind these golf clubs, and they're like, oh my god, like what a swing that was. And Norman's like, yeah, it's still going. So we have the traffic officer that continues to somehow or another continue to get hit, and to the point to where he goes on and he gets like knocked out at a certain point. And we have the golf ball again that goes through Quimsy's office and eventually goes down to the point of making its way back to the golfing machine, where it stops at a certain point. And we have Norman that's like, well, I hope that this thing doesn't get to 13 and it gets to 13,000. And so Norman says that 13 is his unlucky number. It gets to 13,000. The golf machine just explodes. It just explodes. The golf club also just explodes. Uh, None of this really rationally makes sense, but it happens. So we then go on to have Norman. Norman is to go on and be back with Barbara. And here is the point where they're going on and they're talking about getting married. And Norman is talking about the money that he wants to save. And this is where they get into such a smooshing matchup or a kissing matchup that eventually Norman is to tell Barbara that she wins and that he will marry her. So we have Tuttle that is to go on and call Quimby and ask, okay, what is the plan for today to make Norman's life miserable? So Quimby is to go on and say that Norman is going to be sent to the shoe department. And Tuttle's like, shoe department? What is that going to do? And Quimby says, yeah, I have a plan about that. I even have a ringer coming in. I have a woman coming in, and she's a lady wrestler. Yeah, Norman is going to have a tough time dealing with this woman for sure. And so we have Norman that is going on and speaking to a customer and be trying to get this shoe onto her. And I believe this girl's name, as she's to go on and actually have one, is to be Mrs. Gluckman. So Mrs. Gluckman is to go on and try to put on the shoe, and consistently she says that it's way too tight. We have a certain point where Norman is to realize that he is to have this this shoehorn in there, or that he also is to have his finger in there. She even tries to walk away from him, and he's like, like, you have my thumb. So eventually it seems that this woman is to go on and be satisfied with these shoes. And so the next thing we see coming in is this woman. And she sits down. We have Norman that goes on and he sees Barbara, and so the two of them start talking. Barbara states to Norman, oh, hey, yeah, they have you working in shoes now? And so Norman's like, well, yeah, like I sold so many shoes. I sold them to even some basketball players. And he had gone on to mention that there was somebody who wanted a certain, I think, golfing shoes, but Norman told them that sneakers would be fine. So, uh, yeah, I think that's golfing shoes. I'm not quite sure. You'd have to correct me there if I said that wrong. So, there is, of course, a woman who is to be called Lady Wrestler, who is to go on and be asking for a salesman, and so Norman is to follow up on that. Norman makes his way to the wrestler, and she is to be asking for a shoe that is to be of a size 3. And Norman is like, well, are you sure about that? So we have Norman that goes on to take off the first shoe of this woman after he is to get the exact the exact shoe that she wanted. So Norman takes off the first shoe of this woman, and it's so difficult to just rip off of her. he goes on to like squeeze the shoe onto her foot, and like he was able to achieve said goal. And then the woman is like, well, yeah, now I want you to put it on the other shoe. And so Norman's like, really? Okay. So Norman rips off the other shoe and tries as best as he can to put the other shoe on, but it just won't budge. So Norman is going on and he's like figuring out ways to kind of continue to keep shoving the shoe on. Like he's even getting to the point where he has this woman's leg like in between his own, and he's like trying to figure out a way to like just smack it down. Whoops, let me pause here for a second. I dropped my phone. And he gets to a point to where he's basically having his butt in her face, and the woman's like, are you trying to do anything inappropriate? And Norman is going on and telling her, it's like, hey, I have like my back to you. Like, what exactly can I do here? So the more and more that Norman is to try to struggle with getting the shoe on, the more that the wrestler is to start to get upset. And they start like rolling around all over the ground. And it gets to the point to where now the female wrestler is kind of just hopping on top of Norman and beating him up. So to the point to where the wrestler even goes on and like chucks Norman and just beats the crap out of him. Barbara is watching off in the distance. She's like, Norman! Norman! She's just be very worried about Norman here. So we also have Quimby that is also watching off in the distance. He has a mannequin next to him. And like Quimby is all just like, oh, what's going to happen here? So we all of a sudden come to find that the wrestler ends up chucking Norman into this whole shelf full of shoes, and the shelf goes flying, and it seems that there is to be that this shelf goes near this window, and all these boxes of shoes fall out of this window and all land onto, again, this traffic cop. And he is to get the brunt of all these shoes just falling onto him. The next thing we see is now Quimby turning to this mannequin who has now lost its head. And so Quimby is digging through this mannequin's dress to try to get these jewels to get back onto the neck, and then to put the mannequin's neck back on. And then after he leaves, the mannequin just falls apart anyways. So now Norman has gone on to try to just like limp his way to this nurse's office with Barbara and this nurse at his side. So the next day, we have Norman making his way back into the store and notices that the traffic cop now has this weird kind of little pallet above him, and has these just kind of metal pipes that are just around him as this barrier, so that way he won't get hit with anything. Also underneath his hat, he has this bandage over his head. So like this guy's been through some things. So Norman is going on to have his little paper slip to punch in here, and he talks with Shirley here, and she calls him handsome, and so he starts flexing and like, yeah, handsome. I don't know, but it's kind of funny that both Shirley and Norman here are just having this weird thing between the two of them, as if like maybe there is to be some kind of love triangle kind of going on with Shirley, Norman, like, or maybe just Norman just has this magnetism with women. I don't know, but if anything, like I think that was to be the kind of one interesting thing about this film. So to me, just to be like, is that girl after him, or what's going on there? So here is where we go on to have Norman, who is to eventually make his way into this store, this part of the store that has these delicacies. And we come to find this couple who is Herman and Mabel. And the man has a turban on, and the woman has this very much cloak on. And the two of them, the whole time, they're going on and they're thrusting things into the turban and into the woman's cloak. And then eventually they're shoplifting and they're leaving. So the next thing we see here is both Norman and Irving. They're going on and talking about this part of the store, what it's about. So eventually Norman will come to find that this food is to be kind of a certain things that are kind of more rare to dare say carry, but Norman will have to go on and at some point have to try this and to then turn around and try to sell it to people. Like, we go on and we have Irving that says that there's escargot there, there's snails there. He'll also go on and talk about roasted grasshoppers, and eventually he'll go on and hand Norman one of these roasted grasshopper cans and force it down Norman's throat, where he's consistently going on and having Norman eat this thing over and over and over again. Hilarious to the faces that Norman is giving us here, to where this gives us just hilarious comedy. We would go on to have Barbara, after Irving leaves, start to talk to Norman, and Barbara asks Norman, it's like, hey, are you all right? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And so the next thing we see is Norman running off, because I'm sure he just wants to all this stuff up. So Norman gets transitioned to a clothing part of the store, and come to find out that this is to be a bargained price of clothing part of the store. And as Norman is going on and talking to this guy who is to own this half of the store, I believe his name is Jerome, we would go to have Jerome, who is seemingly, after talking to Norman, leaves and tries to hide out, and Norman doesn't exactly know why, and Jerome is like, okay guys, open the store. All of a sudden, there is to be, like, the floodgates of all of these women that are like, pa, 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 pa. Like, I know that's a horrible visual, but it's kind of true. Like, there's, like, and this is gonna sound, it's a stampede. It's a stampede of women, let's say that. So we have a stampede of women making their way through this store, and we have Norman who's like, no, no. So all these women are coming through, and they're grabbing, thrusting, they're even tearing off Norman's own clothes. They see his tie. Hey, give me that red tie. Rip it off. We all of a sudden have Norman being, like, unpantsed, and, like, by the end of this, all we see is that Norman has his dress shirt and his underoos, and that's it. And he's just walking off like a man scarred from the thrusting of all of these women just grabbing at this. It's seriously some Black Friday for you. That is really some Black Friday flavoring for you. So As soon as the dust settles, the stampede has dissipated and gone away, Norman is to just be again a disheveled man, just thrusting his way through whatever is left of this store and walking off. The next thing we see here is Quimby noticing Norman at this part of the TV store. Quimby goes on and asks Norman, hey, what are you doing with that TV? Because you're working in the mattress department. What are you doing with this TV? Like, are you stealing it? And Norman's like, no. Like, there's this one customer that is going to want to buy this mattress, but she wants to see what it's to look like with a TV being a certain place. And so I'm going to try to make the customer happy. So Norman is to go on and explain how he had to get certain ladders and a surfboard to balance on top of ladders, and then he's going to put a TV on top of it, which is so absurd to me. So, but he's going to go on and do this. So Norman is to explain all this to Norman is to go on and explain this to Quimby, and Quimby's like, okay, cool. Like, you're going on and you're giving this customer what she wants. Okay, all right. So Norman goes on, gets up the ladder, puts the TV up there, and the woman is to go on and just be like, well, I'm sorry, but this TV that you have brought up there is way too small. What difference does it make? It's a TV on top of a ladder, on top of a... Like, what absurdity do we have to have this day? So the woman ends up mentioning that's a 30-inch TV, and I'm like, good God, woman. Like... And also, this is a sign of the times where a 30-inch TV is actually a feasibly big TV now. And also, this is the era of tube TVs, where tube TVs, they're not light. I had gone on and worked at a retail store where tube TVs still existed. The old-fashioned ones, the ones that had kind of the meat in the back of it, if you know what I mean. Like, that was some plus-size TVs, some beef of the TVs. And yeah, those things sucked to try to get around. But also, like, flat TVs aren't exactly easy either. Like, I had gone on to had to assemble or I had to try to get a TV onto a TV stand as I was to have taken it off and moved downstairs. Yeah, it took me months to get the TV back onto the TV stand by myself, because I was like, yeah, like, this is going to be severely hard for me to be able to go on and do this. The TV's a 50-inch TV. It's too big. So yeah, so it took me a while, but I was able to trick it into getting into a very specific spot. And I was like, yay, I win. And I did it all by myself. And then I realized, like, oh, my body. No, like, I had moved so many TVs and so many things in my life that, like, yeah, like, that didn't do me in that day, luckily. So, we go on to have Norman. He goes and he gets the way bigger tube TV. I say tube TV because this is the phrase of which that everybody had to explain an older retro TV that is to have, again, the meat in the back instead of being the flat screens like we have now. So, regardless, Norman goes on and he gets his TV, and this thing to him is like nothing. Norman just goes on, grabs this wire, and is bringing this TV up by this wire up this ladder. I'm like, there is no way that this is feasibly, logically in my brain to be working. Like, they would have had to have gone on and had no meat inside that TV whatsoever. And even that, like, you would have had to have gone on to have this TV, like, be gutted of, like, any kind of weight whatsoever to still have it be as thin as it is. Because based on, like, the wood and stuff that it was kind of to look like, yeah, like, there is no way that you can just, oh yeah, just this ladder. No. No. I've gone on and had to put certain TVs on very high displays to the point where I even needed a yeah. No. what they're trying to accomplish here to make it look so easy? No. That is wrong, dear madam and dear sirs. Anyways, we have Norman, finally, after taking 5 years to explain all this, getting this TV onto this surfboard and wanting to show this woman that the TV is now up there. And so, come to find out, this woman has been laying on this bed for so long that she has fallen asleep, which makes sense because I'm sure this TV took a lot of time to get because of how this guy is basically lifting up this TV. I'm sure he had to take breaks to go on and get it and then stop at certain points to then pick it back up and push it all the way to where he needs to go. I'm sure it took forever. So the woman fell asleep, and so now Norman gets back off of the ladder to try to wake the woman up. Accidentally, the TV goes on to start slipping from the surfboard. On top of that, Norman is now with this woman who is calling Norman by some alternative name because this woman is having this weird dream and is consistently grabbing Norman. Norman is trying to go on and getting one away from this woman, but then also realizing that the TV is going to start falling on top of them. So Norman is going to take this woman, grab her, slide her away to safety, and then the TV goes on and falls. Quimby is watching all of this happening off in the distance. He's like, what's going to happen here? So the TV falls, and because this is a mattress, the TV bounces because it's heavy, as well as also mattresses to go on and kind of deliver quite a bit of bounce here. So the TV bounces. The next thing we see is that the TV is on top of Quimby. Quimby is in between these matches with this now TV screen that the frame of it, the glass part of it is now shattered. Well, you could still see the screen, but it's shattered, sadly enough. So I'm sure that TV at that time period probably costed a lot of money. So the next thing we see is Quimby now in the first aid, the nurse's office, and he has these crutches. And so both Quimby and Norman are having this little bit of conversation here. And Quimby is just telling Norman to get out of his way. As Norman is trying to tell him, like, well, hey, man, I hope you feel better. Anyways, so we finally get to where Norman tells Barbara that he probably should not end up with her because he thinks that he's gone and done everything wrong while he's been working here, and maybe she should be looking for another guy because he feels like a loser. And he goes on to state that he's accident prone, and Barbara's like, no, I found my guy. And if anything, like, I think they're going on and I think they're kind of making you do way too much, and like they're going on and they're giving you like the worst tasks. So Barbara convinces Norman here that she's found the guy that she's going to marry, and that he has and that they have sexy lips, and so they smooch. So Barbara leaves, and so Norman is now at this door that has this glass on it in the middle of it, and he's going on, he's like he's like kissing the door now. So the next thing we see is that Norman is on this exercise bike. Supposedly he's supposed to exhaust himself so much so that he will turn around and go and want to fall asleep on this mattress. I don't know why this goal is to be set in place. This seems like an absurd thing to have it be some kind of thing they're doing for the store. So we have Norman that's on this exercise bike. It doesn't really seem that there's any sign of him tiring out. So they go on and they transition him to just start running laps around the store. It goes from the first lap to then the 56th lap to where we see Norman is just dragging himself around the store as if he's a zombified corpse of himself. Barbara gives Norman this cup so he can drink from it, and he's lapping it up like a dog. He's like, and so, but still, Norman is to continue to do what he's doing. And so Barbara is looking at Quimby that's alongside her. And Barbara's like, you know what? I think I know what's going on here. So the next thing that we see her is Barbara calling her mother and laying it all on the table here. Barbara goes on and is to eventually tell her mother she knows what's going on. She knows that her mother is to go on and know about Norman and this, and so Barbara is to go on and say that she is to kind of disown her mother here, stating that she was born without a mother and was to really just hate the fact that Mrs. Tuttle is doing this to Norman because it just doesn't seem right. So Mrs. Tuttle is saying to Barbara how it's like, well, like I'm doing this for your own good. Like I'm doing this so that way you can find the right guy. And Barbara is to go on and be like, well, like he is going to be like the right guy. He is going to he is going to be the guy that I marry. And there's no convincing her otherwise. So after this conversation is to be hung up, Barbara makes her way to Norman, and Norman is sleeping. He's like passed out on this bed. And Barbara goes on and she takes off his shoes and starts taking off his socks, and then realizes that Norman has a number of different socks on. So she's like continuing to take off socks just to find out that there's a ton of other socks on this guy's feet. So she's like continuing to just take off socks, and then like it just gets to the point where like she just gives up. I don't know what was happening there. It just looks hilarious either way. So the next thing we see is Barbara is buying a wedding dress at the store. Quimby and Shirley notice that Barbara is going to buy a wedding dress, and Quimby is like, "Oh, I need to tell her mother about this." Like, so Quimby rushes to tell Mrs. Tuttle about the purchasing of this wedding dress, and realizes now Mrs. Tuttle has 1 week to make Norman's life miserable before he gets married. So the plan of attack is for Norman to now be in this gun department. Good grief. So we have Norman now in this kind of Safarian gear, I would say. And one kid ends up asking Norman what exactly he's dressed as. And he's like, "Are you a Boy Scout?" And he's like, "No, I'm a Great White Hunter." It's like, okay, sure, whatever. So a woman comes in to want to buy this elephant gun. And come to find out, Norman finds this woman to be very familiar. He realizes that this is to be some TV hunter of a woman named Emily. So Norman goes on and on and on about all the adventures that this woman is to go on and have, and talk about all of these times of which that an animal had killed this cameraman, but eventually Emily had kind of taken care of it, and so on and so forth. Like, goes in this whole rant about all these animals of which that Emily had been face to face with and gone on to, of course, come out unscathed because she's here. So Emily goes on and tells Norman, it's like, well, hey, do you have a woman? You have a woman, right? You have a wife or a woman or something? And Norman's going and say, yes, I do. And Emily's like, well, I don't know how she could deal with a man like you, but okay, whatever. So Emily goes on and asks for an elephant gun. And it's funny how Norman is struggling to hold these guns because, like, oh my god, they're so heavy. So he gives her the right elephant gun and then asks what exact bullets she is to go on and want. It's like, well, of course I want elephant shells. And Norman is like, oh yeah, I guess you should probably actually want elephant shells. And so Emily's like, no, I actually wanted canary shells because I want to go on and be hunting canaries with my elephant gun. So yeah, so elephant shells for elephant gun, and the woman goes on and just tells Norman, hey, yeah, just charge it, and then she leaves. We then go on to have Norman, who grabs a gun of himself and is to take it and is to aim with it. He fires and hits the uh one of the animal uh I'm trying to, what is the right word here? One of the animal heads that are to be placed upon the wall here that are to, of course, be God, taxidermied? That's what I was going with here. And the taxidermied animal explodes, and Norman ends up getting kicked back so much so that he thrusts through this tent, ripping through the tent, goes on to then be thrusted into this boat. The boat goes flying into this seemingly bits of carpeting and tile flooring that are to all be kind of knocked over like pins from a bowling alley. Further and further, Norman is to be like sliding down these stairs and all these, like, it goes on and very much reminds us of the golf ball situation. So after that is all covered and done with, we have Norman that makes his way to Mr. Tuttle here. Norman goes on and is to tell Mr. Tuttle that he's like, well, hey, I want to tell you that I'm going to get married soon. And you know what? I need a best man. And you know what? I think you're the nicest guy that I've ever gone on to meet here. And you know what? I think you should be my best man. Mr. Tuttle is just kind of blown away by this news. He's like, well, yeah, yeah, like I'll definitely go on and whatever you need. Like, if anything, I'll even give you my own house. Like, you can get married in my house. Like, if I saw you going on and getting married at a church or a courthouse or what, no. You come to my house and I will marry you there. And so it is also kind of funny how Mr. Tuttle is going on and talking about like the bathrooms and everything like that. And Norman is saying, that's, well, like, I don't want me and my wife to get married in some tub somewhere. But so Mr. Tuttle would say, yeah, come to my house. You and your lady can get married. Mr. Tuttle has no idea that Norman is going to go on and end up with this woman. But eventually, Mr. Tuttle does know that his daughter is getting married soon. And at some point also, Mr. Tuttle mentions, man, I hope my daughter can go on and find a man half as good as Norman. And then coinkadinkly, we are to go on to have this reveal at some point. So Norman goes on and is to seemingly be doing this delivery service, I believe, for this store. So he's getting these certain items out of this truck. So he's transitioned from there now for the store. So Norman is going on and having this giant mirror coming out of this truck. And he takes this giant mirror and he accidentally is having this reflected of light coming off of it that goes on and starts hitting all the cars that are in the road. All the cars start swerving and they end up having this massive accident. So even with Norman being a part of this delivery system, even then he's causing chaos. Even then he's having a problem for the traffic cop that is to now just go on and be like, God dang it, like this guy cannot get out of danger within the following X number of days here. So now we have Mrs. Tuttle. She is to go on and finally come to a head with Mr. Tuttle, and the two of them have a argument here. Mr. Tuttle is to go on and finally take control of his life, of his house, of his whichever, and is to go on and have Mr. Tuttle tell Mrs. Tuttle that he's going to go on and bring these people in, they're going to get married, and Mrs. Tuttle is going to have to be fine with it, as well as also Mr. Tuttle is to go on and tell Mrs. Tuttle that, hey, like, if our daughter is getting married to a schmuck or whoever, who cares? Like, she's going to have she's going to be happy. She's going to, just go on and do something that is going to be what she finds to be the best for her for the rest of her life. Blah, 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 blah. Like, so we go on to kind of having Mrs. Tuttle kind of be kicked out of her own mansion somewhat. And so Norman goes on and is now with Barbara here in this taxi. He goes on to blindfold her and tells her not to peek. So they get out of the taxi, they meet with Mr. Tuttle, and Norman reveals Barbara to Mr. Tuttle. The two of them hug, and Norman's like, seems like you guys have known one another for your whole lives. Like, this seems kind of weird. Mr. Tuttle does not go on and reveal anything, but yeah, like, it just seems that it's like, well, yeah, I guess it's good that we're just having this wedding here. So this is the odd reveal. They're still trying to keep everything secret. And when Barbara and Mr. Tuttle hug, Barbara tells her father, "Thank you, Dad. I couldn't be happier, dear." That's what Mr. Tuttle says. So Mr. Tuttle comes in seemingly drunk off his ass to make his way to be shouting all kind of absurdities while Mrs. Tuttle is hearing it. So the following morning, we have Mrs. Tuttle talking to Quimby. And Quimby is to go on and tell Tuttle that the character of Norman is to be so undefeatable that there's nothing that Quimby at this point can do to have anything but like, well, yeah, we need to just get rid of this guy. There's nothing we can further turn anything around at this point to yeah, like this guy's character is just to go on and have it be that there's no business for a guy of this good character to be here, to be working here. And I found that to be just kind of hilarious. So we now have Norman that's working in appliances. And now I'm tempted to have flashbacks of PTSD because appliances have been a good chunk of my life. Immediately just hearing the word of appliances just makes me cringe. So we would come to find that Norman is to be a salesman in appliances. And Barbara is talking to them. The two of them kiss. And all of a sudden, there's this woman coming in. I believe her name is Hazel. And she's looking for an appliance salesman. Norman goes on and is to answer her cries. And is to eventually go on and find out that her vacuum is not working. And she's had this vacuum for years. And it's now crapped out. Norman goes on and says, like, well, hey, like, we don't have a lifetime warranty on this vacuum. But Hazel is to go on and say that she's a great friend with the owner of who is to be in this business. So a warranty is to be waived because of specifically her, of, I guess, her financial ability to just be like, well, no, you're going to do whatever I want because I'm a rich person. So Norman goes on and be like, well, yeah, maybe we can go on and kind of amend a whole warranty for you. So Norman goes on and he takes this vacuum and he realizes that there's a problem with its suction. Yeah, that can quite happen a lot when vacuums end up getting clogged. I've gone on to had a lot of vacuums and a number of things just kind of serviced in my life, lawnmowers and things of that nature. So yeah, so I've kind of seen and heard it all. But eventually, there is no actual place that I think at any point you can really go unless there is a mom and pop repair store anymore. Yeah, like I had gone on to work with a place called Sears that seems to most of the time not be existing things anymore. There may be a mom and pop store somewhere out there now still that exists, but yeah, there isn't a repair place I don't think for them anymore. But regardless, I had been at a time where I've done those services and yeah, I would hear all kinds of problems that would come with certain items. A lot of times it would just get to the point where it's like, it'd probably be better off if you probably just replaced it because the repair bill that you'd have to pay for said item, yeah, it'd probably be as expensive as getting a newer one. Because yeah, the repair things are not for free. They really aren't. So we would go on to have Norman, who is to fix this vacuum, hoping to have a better suction from this vacuum. The problem is that the vacuum starts to go on and is suctioning too well. And all of a sudden, it starts to suction up everything. Norman tries to go on and tries to unplug it from the outlet, and it's not working. Norman is trying to thrust the outlet off, and it's not going. So, further and further, everything that we see in the radius around this vacuum is getting sucked up. The woman is losing her hat. Eventually, the woman will lose her dog. The woman is seemingly losing her scarf as Norman gets back to the vacuum and is pulling this woman away from it so that way she won't continue to have her scarf get suctioned up by this vacuum. Further, we'll go on and start to see this woman who is to try and sell a toaster to somebody. All of a sudden, the toast is to be coming flying up and go into the vacuum. All of a sudden, this fine china, these dishes within this seemingly cabinet open. The dishes come flying into the vacuum and get sucked up. We go on further. We have mannequins who are losing clothing. We would go on to see a person ending up getting seemingly to have gotten fallen into some small freezer of sorts, and like half of her body is kind of sunk into this freezer because it's one of those freezers that are to kind of not be upright. It's kind of one of those kind of more like kind of other kind of smaller to the ground freezers, whatever. Anyways, so we have a bunch of appliances that start to go. There's just a large number of things that all get sucked. Shirley's skirt ends up getting sucked into this vacuum as she's to now go on and show us really basically just her leggings and her underwear, her panties. So we would go and have both Quimby and both Miss Tuttle that make their way into the store of area of which that Norman is in with his vacuum, And Mrs. Tuttle ends up losing her hat. She also ends up losing, I believe, her hairpiece. It goes flying. Quimby is to try to protect the fact that Tuttle is to have lost her wig or hairpiece or whatever. So he goes on and he tries to put some handkerchief or something over it to protect this woman's privacy, because of course he is. He's trying to make her look good. And Tuttle is to kind of be very upset with Quimby and to go on and so we're even seeing like the floor tiles are ripping off the floor and going into this vacuum. So Norman thrusts back to the outlet to try to get this thing unplugged. The further and further this vacuum gets larger and larger and larger. So it gets to the point to where this vacuum goes on and grows so large that it absurdly just starts to actually float up into the air, which I'm not quite sure why. Because of how much weight is within this vacuum, it would feasibly mean that maybe this would just be a rolling ball of Indiana Jones style that is just to be breaking through the entire store because of the weight of this item. That would be more feasible in my mind for that thing to occur instead of all of a sudden floating up to the sea. I guess it's a much more comedic thing that this thing is floating up in the air, but whatever. So as this vacuum is to now be floating unusually into the air, Norman is to try to pull this vacuum back down to the ground. And he is to even try and put his own whole weight onto this cord to try to pull it down, and it's not working. So Mr. Tuttle and both Barbara make their way into the store and are watching Norman struggle with this thing. And we now have Hazel, who is to go on and try to figure out where exactly her dog is. All of a sudden, we come to find that the dog is within the vacuum. And so that's what makes it the dire bit of like, hey, we need to go on and we need to free this dog from this vacuum because he will probably suffocate. So we need to figure out a fast strategy to get this vacuum to go down to the ground and also alleviate the dog from vacuum. So Norman tries to think fast here and he grabs a ladder. He goes up the ladder. He's like, hold on, Fifi, I'll get you. So he goes up the ladder and he has his kitchen knife in hand. People are starting to go on and freak out for the fact that this guy is going to have this knife and is going to pop this vacuum. And everybody starts running away and Norman's like, what's wrong with you all? Like, it'll be fine. I'll just shove this knife in this thing. It'll be okay. So as soon as he does, we just see this huge confetti of bullshit that just comes flying out of this vacuum. We have Quimby that has his corset come flying into his face. He goes on to be thrusted out of this window and is now dangling or hanging on to this flagpole. And that honestly is hilarious because feasibly we have to have this guy squirm. There's this one woman that is going on and she is just sliding down this hallway. And I'm just like, oh my god. So I'm just having a good time with this. So Hazel is to go on and notice that Norman does have Fifi in his arms. Like, oh my god, he has the dog. Okay, great. So Norman gives back Fifi, and Hazel goes on to tell Mrs. Tuttle that she will never again come into this store. It's like, oh well, I guess we just lost one customer for today. So Mrs. Tuttle goes on and says to Hazel, it's like, well, I don't blame you, Hazel. And then Mrs. Tuttle goes on and turns to Norman here. Norman tries to go on and find Mrs. Tuttle's wig or hairpiece and tries to put it back onto her. And is to adjust it to where it just looks worse and worse. So as Tuttle ends up getting very upset with Norman, Barbara kind of gets in the middle here, and Barbara finally reveals to Norman who she is, and that she is to go on and be the daughter of Mrs. Tuttle. And the fact that Barbara had held this from Norman is to go on and just be like, well, you kind of lied to me. You kept this from me. So, you know what? Like, it's great that you have this money and all, but you know what? I'm done. I'm gonna leave. Like, I'm upset. So, Norman goes off and is continuing his dog job. And so he's hauling all these dogs. And then all of a sudden, as he's just kind of going about his job, we then would notice that Barbara, Mr. and Mrs. Tuttle are all going on, and they are too doing this dog walking job. And as every one of these people pass from the back of them, they all have these things on the back of them that state these certain things. And so Barbara's, I think, ends up saying, like, well, hey, like, forgive me for what I did. And Mr. Tuttle says, yeah, forgive me too. And then Mrs. Tuttle says, forgive us all, and so on. And so we go on to have Norman, who's reading all this. He's like, I think I can kind of, I think I could work something out. So the next thing we see here is both Barbara and Norman. They're hugging, they're embracing, and like that's how the movie just kind of ends. So with that said, I'm gonna get the out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for going on watching this. I know that this is probably longer than the film. I seem to can't escape that kind of long-winded way of talking. My apologies. If anything, also, I'm honestly kind of happy that this is under 2 hours. I think that's my goal at this point, is to just try to get videos under 2 hours at this point. But that probably won't happen with stuff like Power Rangers, because that takes for freaking ever for me to need to just go into every little nitty-gritty detail. But I hope you are to go on and enjoy your day and enjoy this review in any way that you want to. I hope you can go on and enjoy this film and check it out, because maybe you've never gone on and heard of it before, or maybe you have gone on and heard of it, but you want to re-go on and check it out. But either way, this is just my thing for I can have something to upload for today, and I hope that like, to me, I honestly really needed this. Like, I really was at a point where I was really just like, man, I am really dragging it through a lot of the stuff that I've been doing, because I've kind of been uh, doing certain exercises, and also doing these reviews. And like, it's not about that the reviews were really challenging. It was just like, yeah, kind of doing these kind of same things at the same time is just not really really good for me right now. But like, I got them all done. I'm happy that they at least are things that I uploaded. But also I'm just like, man, like, I just didn't really have a lot of energy while I was doing a lot of these reviews. And I was trying to find something that I can kind of get my get some kind of fun back into this. And I was looking for something funny and looking for something that was lighthearted, and this was it. So thank you. I'm gonna get the heck out of here. Bye everybody. Bye everybody.